The effects of changing the values of a, h, and k of quadratic function. Let us consider the different forms of quadratic functions in analyzing the effects of the values of a, h, and k to the graph of quadratic function. First, let's have y equals x squared with vertex at 0, 0, y equals 1 half x squared with vertex at 0, 0, and y equals 3x squared with vertex at 0, 0. So let's take a look at the graph of each quadratic function. So the graph of y equals x squared, the graph of y equals 1 half x squared is the red one, and the graph of y equals 3x squared is the green one. So as you observe, the quadratic function is in the form of y equals ax squared. So only the quadratic term ax squared. So if the quadratic function is in the form of y equals ax squared, the vertex is automatic at the origin or 0, 0. So what is the difference among these three quadratic functions? Look at the values of a. In color blue, the value of a is 1. In the second quadratic function, the value of a is 1 half. And on the third quadratic function, the value of a is positive 3. Let's take a look at the effects of changing the values of a to the graph of quadratic function. So in here, again, we have y equals x squared and the value of a of this quadratic function is 1. What if we change the value of a into 1 half, which is the smaller value of a? And what happens to the graph as you can see in this illustration? And what if we change from a equals 1, we change the value of a into 3, which is the green one? So what happens to the graph of quadratic function? So as you can see in the illustration, the graph becomes wider if the absolute value of a becomes smaller, and narrower if the absolute value is larger. So the first form of quadratic function, which is the simplest form, is y equals ax squared. Automatic, the vertex is at 0, 0, and we can say the larger the absolute value of a, the narrower is the graph. Okay, next, let's have the following quadratic functions. Let's start with the basic, or y equals x squared with vertex at 0, 0. Next is y equals x squared minus 8x plus 16 with vertex at 4, 0. And y equals x squared plus 6x plus 9 with vertex at negative 3, 0. So what happens to the graph? As you can see in the vertices of these three quadratic function, all of these vertices having the same value of k, which is 0, but they have different values of h. Okay, so what happens to the graph as we change the value of h into positive value and into a negative value? So again, our reference is the y equals x squared with vertex at 0, 0. Take a look if we change the vertex into 4, 0. So there you have it, the graph of the second quadratic function. And what if we change the vertex into negative 3, 0? Okay, so that's it for the third quadratic function. So, if we're going to summarize this quadratic function, the equivalent standard form of y equals x squared minus 8x plus 16 is y equals the quantity of x minus 4 squared. And the other one, y equals x squared plus 6x plus 9, the standard form is y equals the quantity of x plus 3 squared. And the graph moves to the right if h is positive and to the left if h is negative. And the form of this quadratic function is in the form of y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared. Kung mapapansin nyo po, there is no value of k. So, automatic, the value of k in here is 0. So, the graph just move along the x-axis, either right or left, depending on the values of h. So again, the second form of quadratic function is in the form of y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared. So the vertex is at h0, and to draw the graph of y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared, slide the graph of y equals ax squared horizontally h units. So if h is greater than 0 or positive, slide it to the right, and if h is less than 0 or negative, slide the graph to the left. Alright, let's have the third form of quadratic function. Again, let's compare muna with y equals x squared, which is the simplest form with vertex at 0, 0. And then the other quadratic function, y equals x squared plus 5. So the vertex of this quadratic function is 0, 5. And the third one, y equals x squared minus 2, the vertex is at 0, negative 2. As you observe, the vertices of these quadratic functions, they have the same values of h, which is 0, but they have different values of k. So what is the effect of changing the values of k to the graph of quadratic function? So let us have this graph of the y equals x squared. And then let's illustrate the graph of y equals x squared plus 5. So what happens to the graph? And then let's illustrate y equals x squared minus 2. So what happens to the graph? As you can see in the illustration. So the third form of quadratic function is in the form of y equals ax squared plus k. So in here, there is no value of h. So automatic ang h ay 0. So if the given is consisting only of the quadratic term and constant term, let's say x squared plus 5, so there is no linear term na bx, so therefore the vertex h is 0 and we have the value of k. And ano yung nangyayari sa graph? As you can see in the illustration, the graph moves upward if k is positive and downward if k is negative. To summarize the third form of quadratic function, that is in the form of y equals ax squared plus k. So the vertex is at 0k, and to draw the graph of y equals ax squared plus k, slide the graph of y equals ax squared vertically k units. If k is greater than 0 or positive, slide it upward, and if k is less than 0 or negative, slide it downward. So let's have the last form of quadratic function. Again, let's use this y equals x squared with vertex at 0, 0 to compare the other quadratic function. So y equals x squared minus 4x plus 5 with vertex at 2, 1, wherein the standard form is y equals the quantity of x minus 2 squared plus 1. So the standard form in getting the vertex is, you learned that in our previous discussion about equations of quadratic function. Next is y equals x squared plus 6x plus 7. The vertex is at negative 3, negative 2. So the last form of quadratic function is in the form of y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared plus k. To draw the graph, since kompleto na po yung hk dito, the movement of h, if we have the value of h, right or left, depending on the sign. And then if we have the value of k, the graph move upward or downward depending on the sign. So in here, in the second function, the vertex is at 2, 1. So the graph moves 2 units to the right and 1 unit upward. So this is the graph of the second quadratic function, the red one. Let's just check the movement of the points from blue to the red. So first point on the blue graph, move to the right 2 units, 1, 2, and then upward ng 1. So there you have it, the first point. Vertex, 1, 2 units to the right, 1 unit upward. Then the last point, 1, 2, then 1 unit upward. Now, for the third quadratic function, since ang value ng h ay negative 3, so move to the left 3 units, and negative 2 yung value ng k, so move 2 units downward. So, yung blue ulit na point, move to the left, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 units downward, 1, 2. So draw the point in here. Next point, the vertex, 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2. Next point, the last point in the blue graph, 1, 2, 3 to the left, then 2 units downward, 1, 2. So draw here the last point. And then we can now draw the graph by connecting the 3 points. So the graph moves to the right or left and upward or downward depending on the values of h and k. So the third form is y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared plus k, where vertex is at hk, and the graph, just slide the graph of y equals ax squared horizontally h units and vertically k units. So that ends the different forms of quadratic function and the effects of changing the value of a, h, and k to the graph of quadratic function. Let's have the summary of the different forms of quadratic function. So example, using the graph of y equals x squared, draw the graphs of the following quadratic functions without using table of values. So number 1, we have here y equals the quantity of x minus 3 squared plus 1. So the vertex of this quadratic function is at 3, 1. So we're going to move each point of this given quadratic function to the right 3 units and then 1 unit upward. Now, so let's start with the leftmost point. So first point, move 3 units to the right, 1, 2, 3, and then 1 unit upward. So here is the point. Next point, move 3 units to the right, 1, 2, 3, and then 1 unit upward. So draw here the point. And then the vertex is 3, 1. And then you may draw the points na kapantay na po ng nasa left dito sa right. Since symmetrical naman po yung ating parabola. So, yan. So, pwedeng hindi na po mag-move. And then, connect using curved line. So, there you have it, the first quadratic function. Next, the second quadratic function, let's arrange in standard form. So, y is equal to the quantity of x squared plus 4x. So, to make it a PST, so kunin yung kalahati ng 4, which is 2, and then squared, so plus 4. Yung plus 4 na ina-add times a, which is 1, so 4 pa rin po. Kaya, plus 3 minus 4 outside the parentheses. Y equals the quantity of x plus 2 is squared, and then 3 minus 4 is negative 1. So the vertex is at negative 2, negative 1. So in the original quadratic function, we're going to move the graph 2 units to the left and 1 unit downward. So this is the point. First point, move to the left, 1, 2, then downward ng 1. And then, the second point, ganun din, 1, 2 to the left, and then downward ng 1. Then, the vertex is at negative 2, negative 1. And then, yung nasa right side, pwede pong itapat nyo na lang po dito sa left side. So, kapantay lang. Then, the next point, and then draw using the curved line. So, there you have it, the second quadratic function. Next, the third quadratic function, as you can see in here, y equals negative x squared. So, the same lang po ito ng y equals x squared. The only difference is that the opening is downward. So, babalik na rin lang natin itong y equals x squared, yung violet na curved line na yan, ida-downward lang natin. So, kapantay lang po dito sa baba. So, ang vertex ay 0, 0. Yung dalawang sumunod na points, dito lang po sa baba. Kasi nga naka-downward. Yung sumunod na other 2 points sa baba, dahil positive 4 sa taas, edi negative 4 dito sa baba. Okay, so ayan po yung pangatlo na quadratic function y equals negative x squared. So, ang vertex po nito is at point 0, 0. Next, the third one is the vertex is at 0, positive 3. Kasi wala po itong value ng h. Ang form po nito ay y equals ax squared plus k lang. But, yung mapapansin po natin, negative x squared. So, ang i-move natin na graph ay ito pong graph ng y equals negative x squared kasi pareha silang downward. I-move natin ng 3 units upward kasi yung h naman po ay 0. So, upward lang po yung movement. So, yung orange na graph, ito yung y equals negative x squared, i-move natin ng upward ng 3 units. So, 1, 2, 3. Then, draw the point there. Ganun din po yung susunod na point. 1, 2, 3. So, dito po yung sunod na point. Then, yung vertex is 0, 3. And then, yung nasa right side, naka-mirror lang po. Or, i-move na rin po natin para makita mo yung point. So, yung orange, move 1, 2, 3. So, dito po yung point. So, dito po yung point. And then, yung last point, ganun din po, i-move 1, 2, 3. So, dito po. Yan. So, palitan ko lang yung color. Gawin natin kulay blue para makita nyo yung pang-apat. Ayan. So, yun po yung minove. And then, draw the graph. Curve line. So, ito po yung pang-apat na ang given ay y equals negative x squared plus 3. Ang i-minove natin ay yung y equals negative x squared kasi parehas silang downward. So, that ends the lesson.